Hello, and greetings, lovely person. This is RPGmodsFan, and in this video I will be reviewing and discussing the Dungeons & Dragons module S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, which was written by the legendary Gary Gygax and published by TSR in February of 1980. This module also included a 32-page illustration booklet. This module was meant for player characters between the levels of 8 to 12, and it was written for AD&D 1st edition rules. The S3 module began as early as 1976 when TSR was contemplating publication of a science fantasy role-playing game. To TSR, Jim Ward had already shown rough notes of what would become Metamorphosis Alpha. Gary Gygax took Jim's game to the Origins 2 convention and created a science fiction tournament scenario to D&D players at the convention. Both Metamorphosis Alpha and the D&D sci-fi tournament scenario proved to be successful. Gary further developed the tournament scenario, which eventually became the S3 module. Without spoiling too much, the S3 module is a blend of fantasy and science fiction. In 1987, TSR reprinted this module in the Realms of Horror compilation, which is a compilation of the S-series modules. In 2013, Wizards of the Coast reprinted the module in their Dungeons of Dread compilation. In 2019, Goodman Games has also reprinted this module along with adding a conversion to 5th edition rules. In order to fit the text of the module into 32 pages, an economy of words was used. However, this module went too far in its economy of words. Sometimes 2, 3, or even more readings is necessary to understand what is written or being described. To make matters worse, no box text was provided for the read-aloud parts. Some specific examples of economy of words use include between becomes tween, practically no use of bullet points where it would have been appropriate. Not all, but in a number of places, commas are missing before connector words such as but, because, and, which, etc. And hardly any blank spaces between paragraphs or room descriptions. All this makes it frustrating for the Dungeon Master to prepare this adventure for their players. Hopefully this video will help the Dungeon Master to do such that. This module takes place on the fantasy world of Greyhawk, in the mountains known as the Barrier Peaks. Specifically, in the Barrier Peaks northwest of Hornwood in the Grand Duchy of CmdShft. Since there are a number of mountain ranges in the Forgotten Realms, the Dungeon Master has a number of choices of where to place this module. In terms of theme and setting, to me, the closest fitting location would be the Stormhorn Mountains to the west of Cormyr, or the Thunder Peaks to the east of Cormyr and south of the Dalelands. To me, the most memorable moments of the second Dungeons & Dragons movie is an Easter egg to the S3 module, where the rogue of the party, Nim, asks the barbarian Lux what her brother saw at the Barrier Peaks that drove him crazy. He continues voicing his concern about Lux being able to keep her sanity. Lux then throws her sword over Nim's head, purposefully missing. The background and plot hook of the module is as follows. Mysterious attacks from monsters never seen before have devastated the lands in the Grand Duchy of Gygax. These weird-looking monsters were coming from the mountains known as the Barrier Peaks. Within the last few months, a walled town and 4 small fortresses not far distant from the area were destroyed by mysterious attacks. The Grand Duke of Gygax and his lords and nobles have sent expeditions. These expeditions learned that monsters have been coming out of a gated cave at random intervals. The entrance to this place is high upon a rocky face and sheathed in armor. All attempts to explore the space beyond the metal door were met with frustration. Although some search parties have managed to get in when the doors were opened to release more of these strange monsters onto the lands. However, none of the search parties have returned. The newly formed expedition that the player characters are a part of are tasked to find out exactly what this cave is, what is causing the monsters to come forth, who is responsible, how to prevent future incursions, and gather any information regarding this mysterious locale, its strange denizens, and magical devices. The player character's expedition left for the Barrier Peaks a week ago and have climbed up higher into the crags of the peaks. They now stand a bowshot away from the strange metal-doored cave entrance. So, player characters, what is your next move? I will now be discussing the module itself, and this video will contain spoilers. Unless you are a dungeon master who will be running this module for their players, or are a player who already played through this module and are watching this video for nostalgia purposes, I would suggest not to watch the rest of this video. The original S3 module came with a 32-page illustration booklet. The illustrations helped convey the sci-fi aspect of the module. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the spaceship. Hey, Gary, what is the name of this spaceship? It is not specified in the module. Okay, if you have not known it by now, the module's big spoiler is that it takes place in a crashed spaceship. When Gary was originally conceiving this module, he must have been thinking of an O'Neill cylinder, like the Babylon 5 space station from the sci-fi show with the same name, because he describes up as towards the ship's hull and down as towards the ship's interior and center. However, his maps of the module do not reflect this. Originally, the spaceship was part of a larger exploration/colonization expedition space vessel. The cylindrically designed ship was just a self-contained module in a larger spaceship. During the course of its journey, it was overtaken by a deadly plague. In an effort to contain the spread of the virus, the module sections of the vessel were sealed off and then separated. Each modular section was left to its own fate. For this particular modular section, more than a century ago, with the exception of the monsters on board the ship, the plague eventually killed off everyone, the crew, the colonists, etc. Hence, their skeletal remains can be found throughout the ship. The virus itself died out when the last of its hosts died. This modular section found its way to the world of Greyhawk. The onboard computers and robotics managed to bring the ship to an intact landing on the barrier peaks. However, the landing process caused an earth tremor and a landslide that buried the ship for several decades. Recently, a computer malfunction has caused the worker robots to discharge material to the outside world, including some dangerous creatures that were once held in stasis. The spaceship has a total of 6 levels. Displayed are the maps for levels 1 and 2. Level 1 contains quarters for the former officials, officers, and technicians, as well as meeting rooms, lounges, dining rooms, kitchens, game rooms, recreation areas, medical areas, laboratories, libraries, security rooms, stores, and the central computer. Level 2 is a service deck. And yes, I see the upside-down word egg, which probably is an abbreviation for Ernst Gary Gygax. Displayed are the maps for levels 3 and 4. Level 3 is the upper walkway and lounge area. Level 4 is the botanical gardens, rockery, and menagerie. Displayed are the maps for levels 5 and 6. Level 5 is a service deck. Level 6 contains cargo holds, a theater, an auditorium, and exercise facilities. Displayed is the cross-section view of the spaceship, going from levels 1 down to level 6. Wandering on all levels and throughout the spaceship will be police robots and worker robots. There are many circumstances police robots can be summoned within a few rounds, such as attacking a worker robot, damaging important equipment, entering off-limits areas, not displaying the proper security card, etc. Worker robots usually appear within a few rounds to repair any serious damage done to the ship. At the module's start, the player character's expedition has just topped the rise and gained their first view of the decades-ago landslide-encrusted exterior of the spaceship. The lower door will be impossible to open. However, when the player characters arrive, a small upper door will be open for the next hour. If the player characters do not enter through this door, it will close for 20 hours before reopening, and again, it will remain open for only an hour. The player characters start at the southern end of level 1. This southern airlock section is supposed to be identical to the northern airlock section. But because of the poor quality of the map, this is not obvious. The very dark blue shading is supposed to signify that this area is unlit. Flanking to the sides of this metal room are spacesuit storage rooms, which require a violet-colored or higher security card to access. There are some doors which will open merely by pressing upon the panel beside them, and such portals are indicated by the standard door symbol on the module's maps. However, most closed doors and hatchways require special colored cards to open. There are 7 colored access cards. To me, this is too many. So, I would condense it down to 4 at most. Throughout the ship, many sci-fi devices can be found, which will seem wondrous to medieval setting fantasy denizens. They are supposed to be alien to the player characters. All devices will have a limited amount of charges and cannot be used infinitely. Although thin, I will first go over the plot of the module as well as its design. After that, I will briefly describe the devices found within the vessel. There are 4 drop-chute tubes in the crashed spaceship. These tubes provide access to the spaceship's other levels. First off, instead of calling them security, Gary Gygax instead calls them police. Area number 3 is the police robot repair area. Anyone with an orange or higher ranked color card will not be questioned. Also here is a locked arsenal. Near the center of level 1 is the police headquarters. I so much want to call it security instead, but that is probably because I watched too much old Star Trek. Anyway, there are a few police robots in this room. They will ask the nature of any entrance business in an unintelligible language. If the player characters speak continuously for one turn, the robots will be able to translate their language within that time. North of the room are 6 security cells that are now empty. To the south is the security chief's room. Sitting behind the desk are the skeletal remains of the former chief security officer. On and built into his desk sits a console, which can be used to peep into many rooms of this spaceship. Also in this room is a suit of powered armor and a blaster. The police HQ complex also includes a small arms locker, which requires a gray card to enter. What I find funny is the module's description of the library. Remember, this module was written before the time of the internet and tablets, and before personal computers became prevalent. The module states, in addition to standard library fixtures, there are 24 microfilm viewers. So I guess in the far future, information will still be stored onto microfilm. The central computer room can only be accessed by those with a gray-colored card. For the player characters, the far wall appears to be a wall of dark glass. Before the dark glass wall is what appears to be an altar supported by a single silvery column. The altar has 2 arms extended as though to embrace the worshipper. Upon its slanted surface are runes, jewels, and inset decorations. There are 3 skeletons sprawled near the altar, which is really a computer terminal. If the player characters investigate or fool around with the terminal, it is possible for them to trigger one of a number of events, the worst of which is a full red alert status, where all doors and drop-chute tube sphincters are shut and locked. Sleep gas will be pumped into the central complex of the rooms in one round. 4 police robots and 2 worker robots will enter the computer room in 2 to 8 rounds. Medbay 1 on level 1 is the emergency treatment room. Here, a female android will automatically treat any wounded human using a healing spray. She also can inject serums via a syringe that can cure disease, neutralize poison, or counter radiation poisoning. Medbay 2 is the emergency operating room, but unfortunately the android surgeon is malfunctioning. It will attempt to grapple, anesthetize, and operate upon whomever enters the room. Rooms number 13 are radiation-filled. If a Constitution saving throw is not made, the exposed characters will begin to notice a sickness in 2 to 5 turns, and in 6 turns thereafter they will begin to lose 1 point of strength per hour due to the effect of the radiation sickness. At -1 strength, the person is dead. Anti-radiation serum will stop the sickness, and strength will be regained thereafter at 1 point per hour. Chambers numbered 11 and 12 contain veggie pygmies, which make their debut to D&D in this module. Veggie pygmies are short, low-intelligence vegetable creatures. Veggie pygmies grow fungi to eat, and they grow shriekers to serve as a warning system for them. Often accompanying veggie pygmies are their dog-like creatures called thornies. Level 2 served as a service and utilities deck of the spaceship. It is filled with wiring, generators, and machines of all types. Any character violently disturbing components here has a 10% chance of being electrocuted. Wandering around this level is an intellect devourer. The ship's energy fields prevent it from becoming ethereal and escaping. At area number 2 are the jumbled bones of the captain. With careful search of the area, the player characters can find the captain's gray security card, which can open all doors within the ship. On levels 1, 2, 3, and 5 of the ship, areas numbered 13 are radiation-filled. As mentioned before, exposure to such areas will cause radiation sickness, sap strength, and eventually cause death if not treated in time. The inner circumference of level 3 is a walkway. Below, the player characters can see the ship's botanical gardens. Most rooms on the circumference of this level are cargo hold areas containing mostly colonization materials such as building materials, fertilizers, etc. 3 ropers haunt the area marked on the map. 1 roper will be on the walkway fishing for small arboreal creatures in the treetops that are 6 to 12 meters below. 2 types of deadly vegetation growth are also at level 3. One is called strangler vines and are encountered in areas numbered 2. The other are called vampire thorn vines and are encountered in areas numbered 3. Occasionally flying around the open area will be web birds. They will try to ensnare a character with their sticky, unburnable webs they can spin. Within cargo hold number 6 is a wrapped crate at its northern end. Within the crates are 4 coatl in a transparent stasis cage. If freed and not attacked, the coatl will not harm their rescuers, and if needed, they will use their Cure Disease and Cure Light Wounds spells upon party members before departing. The coatl can either go up the hole in the ceiling and hunt the intellect devourer, or they can go hunting for web birds over the botanical gardens. At each corner of the walkway is a magnifying viewer. Level 4 is a combination of being botanical gardens and of a menagerie. The huge central area is teeming with life. Vast areas are covered with foliage and plant matter. Small creatures, such as animals, birds, insects, reptiles, can be seen darting here and there. The botanical gardens now have quite a few deadly animals and plants, some of which include leechoids, which can be encountered in areas labeled with the number 1. At areas number 2 are deadly boring grass, which is a mutated carnivorous plant. At chamber number 3 are 2 lizardoids. Their nest contains 3 unhatched eggs. At chamber number 4 is an Audiam vorax. This ferocious golden-colored carnivore appears to be a badger-like creature. In Latin, Audiam means gold, and vorax means ferociously, which is an adverb of the word ferocious, which itself means craving and/or consuming large quantities of food. The module itself does not mention the Audiam vorax's ferocious appetite for gold. Again, probably due to the economy of words use. The Audiam vorax's appetite for gold and other precious metals as supplements to its diet was not mentioned until AD&D 2nd edition in its monstrous manual. At area number 7 are 6 babuinoids, who will stay silent and try not to be noticed by the party. If need be, they can use the fruits of the deadly plants around them as grenades. Speaking of deadly plants on this level, I will present their illustrations as a montage at the end of this video. At area number 11 are 2 shambling mounds. However, to me, it makes more sense to have these monsters encountered at the swamp area. Unlike the levels above, area number 13 on this level is not radiation-filled. Although I do like Gary's D&D modules, by changing convention here, I can tell Gary is not an engineer. Anyway, instead, there is a monster called a squealer in area number 13. A squealer! Swimming around in the central lake is a froghemoth. It is supposed to be the most fearsome of all the terrible life forms on this level. On the center islet is a cute little bunny on a tree stump. Veterans of old-school D&D will know this monster as a wolf in sheep's clothing. From the center of the islet, the player characters can access a spiral stairway that goes down to 100 feet or 30 meters. At the 50-foot, 70-foot, and 100-foot depths are observation floors, with views into the lake. On the lowest level of the Marine Observatory is a small closet. Inside the closet are 6 scuba diving outfits. Also here is a diving chamber. Lights within any of the observation floors or opening the diving chamber's access door into the lake will attract the attention of the froghemoth. At the upper right section of this level is the Astral View Lounge. Along its back wall is a robo-bar. The module states it is no longer functioning. Being the lush that I am, I, as a DM, would make it functioning. At the back counter of the bar is a small panel under a lid. Playing around with any of the dials and/or switches will cause a grinding noise to be heard, followed by a trembling in the lounge. After several rounds have passed, these effects will cease. Thereafter, a section of the outer hull will slide aside to reveal a glassy surface, black and freckled with points of colored light. No, the party did not reactivate the vessel. Instead, the view screen is running pre-recorded scenes. Also in the lounge, which I think is needless, are gas bats. As in Level 2, Level 5 is a service and utilities deck. This level is damp and has shallow pools of water in a few places. As before, areas numbered 13 are radiation hazards. Man, Gary should have been consistent with his numbering conventions. The other dangers here are a slithering tracker in a shallow pool at area number 1, yellow mold at areas numbered 2, and gray oozes at areas numbered 3. Level 6 is the lowest level of the module. It is a deck where recreational and exercise facilities can be found. It contains an auditorium, a theater, a swimming pool, a sauna, a martial arts training room, a gymnasium, a workout room, and locker rooms. However, the locker rooms seem a little too small to properly accommodate the potential capacity of the exercise facilities here. Again, showing Gary is not an engineer. He probably forgot that locker rooms should also have toilets, showers, etc. Chamber number 2 is the martial arts training room and has 3 malfunctioning trainer androids. One android is a boxing and wrestling trainer that no longer pulls punches nor loosens deadly holds. Another android is a fencing instructor. The last android is a karate master. A potential funny moment here is if the player characters communicate to it that karate is inferior to boxing. It will then go absolutely berserk and attack the boxer android, destroying both in the process. Similarly, at the opposite end is a weightlifting and workout room. In it, as you can expect, is a malfunctioning physical fitness android. Swimming around in the swimming pool is an eye of the deep. Compared to its kin, it is small and stunted, but it has adapted to living in fresh water. 90% of the time, a mind flayer will be in room number 9. Given how intelligent a mind flayer is, I wonder why it would lair in the ship's theater, and not on the first level where the ship's more vital functions are located. Well, I guess what drove Lux's brother insane was a psionic blast from the mind flayer. The southern cargo hold, labeled as Chamber number 10 on the map, contains many stasis cages. From time to time, the central computer orders the worker robots to unload a creature to the outside. It is these released creatures that are the cause of the recent monster incursion into the Grand Duchy of Jeff. With the exception of a bullet, all the other stasis cages in the holds are now empty. There is a 25% chance per round that the 6 worker robots here will activate, open the hatch doors to the outside world, and toss out the bullet and the characters. If need be, the worker robots will summon more worker robots and police robots to assist in this task. And so ends the expedition to the barrier peaks. Or does it? Because within a round, the bullet will come out of its stasis. Okay, back to discussing the sci-fi devices found on the ship. As they adventure in the spaceship, the player characters will find futuristic devices that are supposed to be alien to them. The illustrations of these devices, to me, at times seems ridiculous and do not make ergonomical sense. Yes, I understand this was intentional, so as to confuse the players. Yes, I understand they are not supposed to look anything like you might expect, and to give them an alien and high-tech feel. However, I just have too much of a scientific mind and too much of an engineering mind. Anyway, the module provides flowcharts for these devices to determine whether or not the player character, via 10-sided dice rolls, are successful in properly using the device. Okay, so let me quickly go through these devices. Displayed, believe it or not, is a blaster pistol. Next, displayed is a blaster rifle. How is a humanoid creature supposed to aim this weapon? Ergonomically, it does not make sense. Instead of humans manning the spaceship, Gary should have had aliens with strange limbs. That would have made more sense than the designs of these devices. Next, we have a laser pistol, followed by a laser rifle. Next, displayed is a needler pistol. Next, we have a paralysis pistol. These next devices are grenades. There are 4 types of grenades: explosive, incendiary, poison gas, and sleep gas. Next, we have powered armor. Those who enjoy Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers from the 1930s will probably like this device, which is an anti-grav belt. Earlier in the video, I have already mentioned about the underwater swimming gear. Next, we have an atmosphere analyzer, followed by a language translator. Gee, why is it so similar to looking like a gun? Next, we have what I call a Gary Gygaxian designed flashlight, called a portable spotlight. There is also a device that functions as a remote control on the worker robots. Since it provides power to other devices, probably the most prized device would be a power disk, which are effectively batteries. Another prized device would be the wound healing canister. Its spray heals 2 to 24 hit points of damage, cures any disease, infection, or spore infestation on the skin. The fire extinguisher looks like a blaster. A number of monsters make their debut to D&D in this module. The most notable ones are the wolf in sheep's clothing, the froghemoth, and the short bipedal low-intelligence veggie pygmies. Roll credits. Displayed are the credits found within the module itself. The S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks module is a clash of genres. It mixes medieval fantasy with sci-fi. This is what made it stand out and memorable. However, from a design and engineering perspective, it has flaws. The biggest one, which I have not mentioned before, is where the hell is the bridge or command center of the spaceship? As far as its concept and as a dungeon and adventure, I love this module. From an engineering perspective, I hate it. So, as a dungeon master, there are quite a few redesigns I would do. Thank you for watching. Hope this video has been informative and entertaining. Till next time, this is RPGmodsFan saying cheers, have a good day, and goodbye.
Whispers in my mind, I slow crazy.